The Trade Federation does not compromise. They will encompass an entire planet without thought of any of the creatures that they need to force out. All or nothing. Chewbacca has wisely decided that we must adopt the stance of our enemy to defeat them. Therefore, Chewbacca has decided that the Trade Federation will have no place on Alaris Prime. I've asked the Jedi Council to allow me to fight with you. They have agreed, on the condition that you create a fortress. We must advance to a new technological level to create a fortress. Then we can destroy the Trade Federation's fortress and chase them off Alaris Prime for good. Shorin has helped us wall off our camp, but we must complete the job. Use your workers to build a medium wall in the gaps. You can even click and drag on the ground to build several wall sections in a row. Be careful not to wall yourself in, though. You should build a gate in one of the larger gaps. The gate allows your units to come and go, but keeps enemy forces out. The Trade Federation will be testing your defenses on a regular basis. It's best to stay prepared. Have you tried building turrets? They're tough, and they will fire automatically at enemies. Did you know that you can garrison a few troopers inside a turret? The troopers will be protected, and they'll give your turret extra firepower. Have you built a war center yet? It's well worth the cost. You should be building toward your next tech level. Click your command center to find out what you need to advance. See the buttons representing resources in the lower left-hand corner? You can buy and sell resources using these buttons. The number on each picture represents the going market prices to buy and sell these resources. War Center gives you numerous upgrades to make your troops tougher and more effective in the field. Atichituk is fully healed and ready to join the fight. I should very much like to join Chewbacca and Atichitok on the battlefield. But I cannot until you build a fortress. You should be building toward your next tech level. Click your command center to find out what you need to advance. should be building toward your next tech level. Click your command center to find out what you need to advance. You have what you need to advance to the next tech level. You should do that now. You should experiment with the advance buttons for your units. Click on a single trooper to see the advance buttons. For example, the aggressive stance lets a unit chase enemies across the map. That's the default stance for new units. The defensive stance lets a unit defend itself without being drawn too far into trouble. If your forces are spread thin, you can use the advance buttons to put a trooper on patrol. If you select several units at once, you can use formation buttons. For example, a box formation makes your stronger units surround and protect your weaker ones. You've made it to Tech Level 3. At this stage, your options for both offense and defense become numerous. You'll find there are many benefits to building a fortress. You should build one now. Incoming droid starfighters. Steel yourself for an attack. They appear to be scouting. They will certainly return for an attack shortly. You can now build missile turrets to fend off air attacks. It would be wise to do that right away. You can also build your own air base. Then you can fight the droid starfighters on equal terms. Good. You have a fortress. I shall arrive shortly. The fortress allows you to garrison almost any unit. It also rains heavy blaster fire on nearby enemies. It increases your population capacity. You should build more missile turrets to defend different areas of the camp. Qui-Gon here. I spotted some strange starships on the way in. I believe the Trade Federation has sent slavers to capture the Wookiee population. Your fortress can create fierce and fearless Wookiee berserkers. Now that you've built a shield, watch any buildings and units within its radius. They'll slowly acquire shielding. Enemy units must wear down shielding before they can damage units or buildings underneath. Airbase can make fighters and bombers, as well as air transport ships to move your units across the map quickly. If an air transport is shut down, the units inside will perish. The heavy weapons factory lets you create artillery and other units to do damage at a distance. Interesting. We have finished studying the holocron that Shorin found. It speaks of an ancient grove nearby. You're at the fourth and final tech level. The most powerful long-range unit you can build at your fortress is the Blaster Cannon. May the Force be with you. Living Force will protect me. Qui-Gon here. If it serves the greater good. Blaster Cannon must be undeployed for travel and deployed to attack. It takes several seconds to deploy and is most vulnerable during that time. I've discovered ancient knowledge. I'll take them. Jedi concentration. This is a fantastic find. With this knowledge, I can convert enemy buildings to our side. Qui-Gon Jinn here. May the Force be with you. The Force will guide us. I stand ready. May the Force be with you. I stand ready. The Force will guide us if it serves the greater good. I serve only the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn here. Qui-Gon here. Qui-Gon Jinn here. I stand ready. Qui-Gon reporting in. I serve only the Force. Qui-Gon reporting in. May the Force be with you. Qui-Gon reporting in. I stand ready. There's the Trade Federation fortress. Win this battle, Qui-Gon Jinn. Force will guide us. I serve only living Force will protect me. Here are these strange ships again.
This is but a minor setback. We will see you again. The price of Wookiee pelts isn't getting any lower.
I have taught all that I can. He is ready to take his place in the galaxy. May the Force be with him.